Welcome to Wellness Unfiltered with Dr. Quinnett. I'm Dr. Quinnett Swink, a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified nutrition coach, wife, and mom. And each week I share honest conversations about what's actually going on with your body, your energy, and your habits. No hype, no quick fixes, just the root cause thinking, so you can begin to understand yourself well enough to feel like yourself again. Are you ready? Let's get into it. So, today I want to talk about mindset. And if you've been with me since the beginning, last week was the final episode of the Summer Wellness Reset series. And we ended that series talking about identity. And as I was sitting down to plan what I wanted to talk about next, mindset kept coming up for me because mindset is one of the biggest drivers of behavior change. Now, before we get any further into today's conversation, I need to be real with you about something. I do come to this conversation with a deeper understanding of behavior change than most because I actually started my career as a school psychologist. So I was trained to understand behavior, why we do what we do, what reinforces behavior, why certain patterns keep repeating. And most importantly, what it actually takes to change behavior in a way that lasts. Now, yes, much of that work was with kids, but here's the thing behavior change is behavior change because we are all human. And the principles don't suddenly stop applying when we become adults. We still repeat behaviors that are reinforced. And in fact, as adults, sometimes it becomes harder to change those behaviors because they have been reinforced for a very long time. We often, especially as adults, we fall back into familiar patterns even when we know those patterns aren't helping us. Hello, me, I'm raising my hand right here, right? And we can absolutely know better and still not do better, right? And that is exactly where I want to start today because I hear women say some version of this all the time. Okay, Quinnett, I know what I'm supposed to do. And I believe them. I know they do know what to do. And they know that they need to move their body more. They know that their sleep matters, that protein matters. They know that starting over every Monday isn't working. And they also know that they don't need another Instagram post telling them to drink more water. The problem isn't always that you need more information. Sometimes the better question is, why am I not doing what I already know? And that is where mindset becomes really important. When we struggle to follow through, I often hear two explanations over and over again. The first one says, you need more discipline, try harder, want it more, get more serious, be more consistent, right? Those are the things that are associated with one side of the coin. The other side of the coin says, it's your nervous system, it's your cortisol. Something is dysregulated and you need to heal that before anything else can work. But here's where I land. I believe, first of all, I'm a therapist and a nutrition coach. So I believe that both sides, they matter, but neither one is the whole story. And a key takeaway from today's episode is you can't mindset your way out of everything. And I'm going to say that again because I want you to really hear me. You cannot mindset your way out of everything, but mindset still matters and it matters a lot. And today, I want to be really specific about where it matters because when I talk about mindset, I'm not talking about repeating affirmations you don't believe. I am not talking about waking up every morning and telling yourself everything is amazing when it isn't. I'm talking about the story that you create around what is happening to you because that story often determines what you do next. And here's what I mean by that. Something changes, right? Maybe the scale goes up, or maybe your energy drops for a few days. And you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't feel like myself. So that's the first part. Something has changed. And at that point, everything that you are noticing, it's information. That is all. But for most of us, it doesn't stay information for very long because immediately, almost immediately, our beautiful brains, decide to tell us what that information means. And it does it very quickly because of past patterns. And what it tells us is my hormones are a mess. My metabolism is broken. Nothing works for me. I'm never going to feel like myself again. So now we are no longer dealing with original information. Now we have a story, and that story creates emotion. And the emotion that it normally creates is either fear, frustration, anxiety, sometimes even shame. And the reality is, those emotions, they are uncomfortable. And as humans, what do we do when we're uncomfortable? We want to get out of that space as quickly as possible, right? We don't want to sit and be uncomfortable. So what do? We react. We say, okay, this isn't working for me. This story is telling me all the reasons why this is true. So I'm going to cut food. I'm going to add more cardio. I'm going to start Googling and see what supplements I can add so that I start to feel better. You tell yourself, Monday is going to be different, right? But here's what I want you to really hear. By the time you react, you are no longer responding to the original thing that you noticed. Like at this point, as you're listening to me, do you remember what we initially noticed? Probably not, because are so far past that we are now in the emotion and how we're responding to that emotion. You are responding to the story that you just attached to the first thing that you noticed. The first thing that you noticed was something changed. Then came the story, then came the fear, then came the reaction. And that sequence, it feeds a loop. And I talk about that all the time, right? That loop of you're frustrated, so then you restrict, and then you get more intense, and then you feel exhausted, and then some shame sets in, and then you quit because it was too intense and didn't fit your life to begin with, whatever you were trying to do. And then you start over and you do it all over again and again and again. And that is why, and I'm being real with you, that is why you feel like you've tried every single plan. And even as you listen to me and I'm telling you, hey, come, trust me, I'm a nutrition coach, let me help you. And I know some of you are sitting there thinking, but I've tried every plan. You can't help me. I'm going to end up in the same place. But here's the reality. Sometimes you didn't actually fail the plan. The pattern, the behavior, it took over before you even had a chance to stay with your original plan long enough to learn something. And this is where what we talked about last week, identity, this is where it connects. Because if the story gets repeated long enough, eventually it stops sounding like something that happened and it just becomes a part of who we are. So think about it. Think about some of the things you may have said to yourself over the years. I've always struggled with my weight. I can never stick to anything. I'm just not consistent. Those all sound like observations, but eventually they start functioning like a mindset, and that mindset becomes your identity, right? Once you believe something, it becomes a part of who you are. You start collecting evidence for it. So when you miss one workout, it's no longer just, oh, I missed one workout. It becomes, see, this is what I always do. You go out of town, and so you're eating differently for the weekend. And it's not just a weekend. The story becomes, I have no self-control. Let's say the scale goes up. It's no longer a data point. It becomes the story of, here we go again. I'm just not meant to lose weight. And that is why mindset matters so much. That is why I'm so passionate about mindset, because the story often decides the next behavior. If you believe you've already messed everything up, you are much more likely to write off the rest of the week. That is the truth. If you believe that nothing works for your body, you are much more likely to chase another plan. And if you believe that you need to feel motivated before you take action, you're going to stall every single time motivation disappears, because the reality is motivation disappears. It does for me too. It is normal. So when I talk about mindset, this is what I mean. I am talking about catching the story before the story starts making decisions for you. So let me give you a real example because I think sometimes when we can actually put it into context with our real life, it clicks even more, right? So it's Tuesday morning. You step on the scale, you're up 4 pounds. And almost immediately, the thought arrives it's happening again. I know that feeling. I've had those moments where the scale, where the number has changed, and I could feel my brain immediately, almost immediately, wanting to turn that one piece of information into a bigger story. And the story becomes maybe I need to eat less. Maybe I've been too relaxed. Maybe I just kind of wasn't focused enough, right? Maybe I need to change something. That's the moment that matters. And it all started with one number. The scale went up. So now we're going to do it again. We're going to go back to Tuesday, same scale, same 4 pounds added to the scale. But this time, you notice what your brain is doing. And you don't have to make the thought disappear. You don't have to tell yourself some positive affirmation. You just notice it. Oh, there it is. There's that thought that says it's happening again, right? You step on the scale, you see the number go up, your brain's like, and then you get to say, oh, I know what you're going to do, brain. And then you get to ask yourself, wait, is this actually true? And you get to say, wait, is this story that's about to be created, is it helping me to make the next decision that I want to make? That question that you begin to ask yourself, that's restore. That's the R in my rooted method. Restore your mindset. And restore comes first for a reason. Because if the story is running everything, it doesn't matter how great the nutrition plan is. The story is going to keep overriding it every single time. But restore alone isn't enough. Changing the story doesn't tell you what's actually happening. That's why the next step is for us to observe. You're going to observe your habits with curiosity, not judgment. I say it every week, right? So instead of immediately changing everything, you just watch. You gather information. Maybe you've been eating out more than usual, or you're skipping lunch because work has just been insanely busy. And then you're genuinely starving by the time you finally sit down at night. Maybe you've been more stressed. Maybe you're constipated, something that is not talked about enough and absolutely will impact the scale. Maybe your routine is just simply different. Kids are getting ready to go back to school. It shifts our routine. So now we're looking at that number, but we're looking at it differently. So instead of immediately jumping to the conclusion and saying scale is up, that means my metabolism is broken, you have actual information. You have things to consider. And some of those things you can do something about, and that is powerful. This is where I want you to start paying attention to your language. What are you saying to yourself? Instead of saying, oh, I skipped my workouts again, maybe you ask yourself, wait, why do I keep scheduling these workouts at the one time of day that is really a conflict with everything else I have going on? Instead of telling yourself that you have no willpower at night, try saying, you know what, I'm tired, I'm stressed, and I am genuinely just hungry by the time I sit down. Do you hear the difference? One is judgment, the other is information. And information gives you options. Judgment usually makes you want to have some sort of consequence, but information helps you make a decision. And that's a huge difference. I want you to start telling yourself, I am gathering information about myself, not evidence against myself. That is observing with curiosity instead of judgment. Restoring your mindset changes the story. Observing reveals the patterns, and you need both because you cannot change the pattern if you've never actually looked at it. So I want you to look at it clearly. If you're afraid that everything you discover is going to come back to more evidence, then we're not looking at it right. I'm going to be honest with you. I want you to look at it through a lens of compassion, being curious. But I also want you to hear me. Curiosity doesn't mean that we get to make excuses for ourselves. This is where we blend compassion with honesty. So if I'm looking at my week and I'm saying this has been a hard week, I'm being compassionate on myself, right? But honesty is also me saying, and I've also been staying up until midnight, scrolling, watching TV, and that probably is not helping how I'm feeling during the day. So I can be compassionate and acknowledge that I've had a hard week, but I also have to be honest. Both can be true. Compassion plus honesty. Because shame doesn't create sustainable behavior change, but neither does pretending that the behavior doesn't matter. The goal isn't judgment. The goal is not for us to judge ourselves. The goal is awareness. Because once you can see the pattern clearly, you can actually decide what needs to change. And sometimes what needs to change is surprisingly simple. Remember, we don't need everything to be dramatic. We need things to be small, measurable, and repeatable. I promise you, that is where you start to see behavior change happen in a sustainable way. So here's what I want you to do this week. One thing, not 10. The next time you feel the urge to immediately fix something, I want you to pause. I just want you to pause. Don't want you to change your food, your workouts. I don't want you to add more supplements or just create a whole new routine. Just pause and ask yourself, what am I noticing? Did the scale go up? Is your energy low? Are your cravings stronger? Just what are you noticing? Then, what story are you telling yourself about what you're noticing? And what pattern can you observe before you decide what needs to change? That's it. That's the practice. Notice what those questions don't ask you to do. I am not asking you to overhaul anything. I am not asking you to be more disciplined. I am asking you to slow down long enough to learn about your behaviors. And I want to tell you what progress looks like here because I don't think it's what people expect. The goal isn't that the thought never comes back. I still have the thought when I see something move in a direction that I'm like, I don't like how that's going. I am human. We are human. But what changes is after that thought happens. The scale moves, right? The old story, it shows up right on schedule. You feel it, you recognize it, and then you're like, okay, well, yep, it moved. I'm going to go have lunch. You don't reorganize your entire week because the number on the scale moved. You don't cut your calories. You don't add more cardio. You don't tell yourself, okay, Monday is going to be the day that I finally get serious. No, you just notice. You gather the information and then you go back to the promise that you made to yourself, which is, I'm going to eat. I'm going to prioritize protein. And you keep going. That's the shift. It's quiet. It's not it's not sexy, right? No, but it changes everything as you continue to move forward towards your goals. Because when you stop reacting to every uncomfortable moment, you finally stay consistent long enough to learn what actually works. And eventually you stop asking, how do I get my old body back? And you start asking the question, what does my body need from me now? And that is a completely different relationship with yourself. That is a different mindset. You're becoming a different version of yourself, but it is a version that's more aligned with who you are today. So if you're listening, right, and you're thinking, again, I know what I'm supposed to do. I am not uninformed. I know, but I'm stuck and I can't figure out why. This is what I do. This is the kind of nutrition coaching that I do. I look at your patterns. We look at your patterns together. We look at how you're sleeping, how you're fueling your body, how you're recovering. We look at the stress in your normal week. We look at your job, your personal life, your professional life, habits, and what are the stories that are influencing certain choices. We look at all of it. And then we build a strategy around the life that you are actually living. And sure, there might be pieces of your life that you're saying, but I don't want to build it around that part. I actually want to change that part. Okay, We can absolutely do that, but we have to observe first. We can't just go in and change everything. We can't do an overhaul. It won't last. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am a licensed therapist. However, when I'm coaching you and we are working in a coaching relationship, it is not therapy. So if you want to explore whether coaching is the right fit for what you're working through, book a consult through the link in the show notes and we'll talk through what you've tried, where you tend to get stuck, and what you've already noticed about your patterns. And I'll tell you honestly whether my coaching program makes sense for you. So here's what I want you to remember today. You can't mindset your way out of everything, but you also can't outplan a story that you've never questioned, if you've never looked at the patterns. I don't want you to overhaul anything this week. I just want you to start paying attention differently. And remember, you are gathering information about yourself, not evidence against yourself. Thanks for spending this time with me today. Before you go, if this episode helped you understand your health a little differently, I would love for you to follow the show and leave a rating or review. It really does help more women find the podcast. So if you're listening on Spotify, go to the Wellness Unfiltered with Dr. Quinnett show page, tap follow, and leave a rating. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, tap follow, then scroll down to ratings and reviews and choose your star rating. And tap write a review if you'd like to leave a few words. Also, remember that everything I share here is for educational purposes only. Always consult your medical provider if you have any concerns about your mental or physical health. And remember, your body is not working against you. It's communicating with you. We just have to learn how to listen. I'll talk to you next Tuesday. Until next time, take care.